This story is about a couple who accidentally travel into the future, to a time when Earth is completely empty. There are no people anywhere, no sounds, no signs of life. Cities stand silent, as if civilization itself has suddenly stopped. It all begins with Riley and Janai, a couple living in the United States. They decide to take a vacation to an unknown, peaceful place far away from their usual life. Riley comes from a rich family and never worries about money. But Janai is different. She often worries about what would happen if his money ran out or if his family ever threw him out. She is practical, while Riley just wants to enjoy life. Riley deeply loves Janai. To make her happy, he spends a lot of money on this trip. For him, it's not about luxury. He just wants time with her, far from everything else. They finally reach a remote tourist spot surrounded by mountains and beautiful views. After checking into a small hotel, they go out to eat and explore the area. Janai is very spiritual. Her father is a priest who runs a small church, so she grew up believing in faith and destiny. But Riley doesn't believe in any of it. He thinks religion and spirituality are just illusions that people follow blindly. Riley always carries an old tape recorder that belonged to his father. It's very old-fashioned compared to modern gadgets, but Riley loves it because it reminds him of his dad. Janai often jokes about it, but he doesn't mind. After getting some rest, the couple heads out to explore. They see tall mountains, steaming hot springs, and endless beauty. They spend the whole day walking with a small tourist group, taking photos, laughing, and enjoying the trip. By the time they return to their hotel, they are both exhausted. Janai quickly falls asleep, and Riley lies down beside her quietly. That night, something strange happens. A bright light appears outside the window. Janai wakes up and walks toward it, thinking it might be the aurora lights that often appear in cold regions. But soon the light becomes brighter, far brighter than any natural light she's ever seen. It begins to rise upward, glowing so intensely that it almost fills the sky. Janai watches in confusion, thinking she must be dreaming. After a while, she falls asleep again. The next morning, Riley wakes her up. Everything seems normal: the sunlight, the room, the clock. But without knowing it, something impossible has happened. The date has changed. It's now the year 2028, even though they had gone to sleep in 2000. They get ready as usual and go downstairs for breakfast. But when they reach the restaurant, the entire hotel is empty. No staff, no guests, not even a single sound. The breakfast buffet isn't there, and calling out gets no answer. Feeling uneasy, they decide to go outside to find another cafe. But the moment they step out, they freeze in shock. The streets are completely empty. Cars are parked but abandoned. Shops are open but lifeless, and there's not a single person anywhere. Riley and Janai stare in disbelief. The lively world they knew just yesterday has turned into silence. Every trace of human life has vanished, as if the entire planet has been left behind. At one point, Riley and Janai began to wonder if maybe there was some kind of grand festival happening, something that had drawn every person in the city to one place. But the thought quickly faded. If such an event were real, they would have known about it. Clearly, something much stranger was going on, something they needed to uncover. They wandered through the silent streets, hoping to spot a single person or at least find a cafe where they could eat. Their phones still had signal, yet no one replied. Every message went unseen, every call unanswered. An uneasy feeling began to grow inside them. Eventually, they entered another cafe. Large TV screens lined the walls, so Riley turned on the news, desperate for answers. But there were no anchors. No voices, only static and flickering images. The quiet was unnerving, heavier than before. Frightened and confused, they hurried out. Riley's thoughts raced. If this is some kind of virus or plague, he said, then where are the bodies? And if aliens attacked us, where are their ships? There has to be proof of something. But there was nothing. No destruction, no chaos, just emptiness. They rushed back to their hotel. Riley opened his laptop and checked the world map. Everything appeared normal, yet not a single human could be found. Every street, every landmark, every popular spot was completely lifeless. It was then they began to understand. Something enormous had happened. Something that erased everyone else, leaving only the two of them behind. Janai tried calling her family, but no one answered. The internet still worked, websites loaded, and systems ran fine, as if the people who once managed them had simply vanished. Terrified, Riley grabbed Janai's hand and decided they had to leave the city immediately. On their way out, they found a car parked with its door open, no owner in sight. They got in and drove off, desperate to escape whatever had caused this emptiness. They headed straight to a church they had visited earlier, where a priest once greeted them warmly. But even the church was empty now. The doors were wide open, candles half melted, and silence filled the air. The entire island was deserted. Finally, they accepted the unthinkable. They were completely alone. Overwhelmed, they held each other and cried. Riley tried to comfort Janai. Everything will be fine. We just need to stay strong. Whatever this is, we'll find a way out. Exhausted, Janai could barely think. Riley took her back to the hotel so she could rest. She slept for hours, her mind trapped between disbelief and fear. The thought that the entire world might be gone was too much to bear. When she finally woke, she whispered, "Maybe God is angry with us. Maybe this is our punishment. That's why no one else is left." Riley shook his head. "No, there has to be a reason. Maybe it's scientific, a virus, an experiment, something beyond our understanding. But we're alive, which means we still have a chance." He reminded her not to give up. "If we stop trying, we'll die just like the rest. We have to keep living until we find the truth." Determined to survive, they searched for a new home. They found an empty house, neat, safe, and fully equipped. Now it was theirs. In fact, the entire island belonged to them. They could go anywhere, take anything, do anything. There was no one left to stop them. They made the house their own, chose their rooms, and tried to create some sense of normal life. Riley cooked meals for Janai and made sure she felt safe. Slowly, she began adjusting to this strange new reality. They even went to a supermarket, filled their carts with food and supplies, and returned home. There was no one to pay, no one to notice. Riley discovered that the city ran on geothermal power, meaning electricity would never run out. For a while, it felt like they had learned to live again. They cooked together, explored abandoned places, danced, and even visited empty nightclubs, just to feel human once more. Now, on this silent island, Riley and Janai were the last two people alive, surviving, adapting, and searching for meaning in a world that had forgotten every trace of humanity. They had no idea how long this strange life would last. For the first few days, things seemed fine. They had food, shelter, and each other. They cooked, slept, and tried to enjoy simple moments. But soon, the silence started to feel heavier. Janae began to feel sad and restless. The thought of being the only two people left in the world was too much for her. She missed the sound of people, the feeling of a living world. Riley tried to stay strong, but even he felt the emptiness growing inside. Still, they decided not to sit and do nothing. They had enough supplies for now, so Riley and Janai began to explore the island. Riley carried his father's old camera and kept taking pictures of Janai. That camera was special to him. It reminded him of his father, and he treated it like treasure. He wanted to capture every little memory with Janai, as if the photos could somehow protect them from loneliness. During their walk, they discovered a natural hot water spring. Laughing like children, they took off their clothes and stepped into the warm water. For a moment, it felt like life was normal again. Just two people enjoying a perfect day. After splashing and playing around, they lay down on the soft grass and fell asleep under the open sky. Over the next few days, they explored the forests and beaches, taking in every part of the island. Nature felt alive, but the world around them was dead quiet. When they returned home, they visited an empty supermarket to collect groceries. Janai picked fruits, snacks, and supplies, while Riley pushed a cart around like a child, trying to make her laugh. At one point, Janai, feeling bored, started punching empty cans. Boxing was her favorite hobby. Riley, meanwhile, decided to balance on the shopping cart and roll across the floor. But then the cart tipped over, and he fell hard, hurting his hand. Janai ran to him immediately and helped clean the wound. Thankfully, it was a small injury, but the thought scared her. There were no doctors, no hospitals, no help if something serious happened. That fear made her angry and helpless. That night, to lift her mood, Riley prepared a small candlelight dinner. Janai got dressed up and joined him at the table. Riley poured wine and tried to make her smile. But even as they sat together, Janai looked sad. She gently scolded him, saying, "You have to take care of yourself. If something happens to me too, how will you survive alone?" Riley promised he would be careful, but deep inside, both of them were breaking down. Being the only people left on Earth felt like living under a curse. The silence, the fear, and the uncertainty were slowly building walls between them. Janai returned to her room, changed her clothes, and lay down, lost in thought. She told Riley about a book her father had given her years ago, one she loved but never finished reading. Instead, she had filled its pages with her own thoughts and daily notes. She regretted never truly reading it. Now the book was gone, and she couldn't get it back. Riley understood that it wasn't just the book she missed, it was the feeling of being connected to her past. He told her softly, "We can't change what's gone, but we can still live. That's why we're here, to be with each other and find moments of peace." He kept trying to take her out, to explore, to keep her mind busy. But a question haunted both of them. What happens when everything runs out? The shelves in the stores were still full, but the canned food had expiration dates. Slowly, the labels started showing dates that were already passed. Even though they were only two people, food couldn't last forever. Riley began eating the cans quickly, saying, "They're going to expire soon anyway." Janai tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. Then she began to worry about something even bigger. What if the geothermal power that kept the city running stopped one day? Without electricity, they wouldn't be able to cook, preserve food, or stay warm. Riley came up with an idea. "We'll start farming," he said, "and maybe even learn to hunt like ancient people did. We'll make fire, cook food, and survive with what nature gives us." Janai laughed at first. Both of them were city people who had never done anything like that, but soon she realized he was right. They had no choice now. The situation had changed them. They didn't know what new dangers or challenges the future would bring, but one thing was clear. They had to keep going. They had to fight, adapt, and hold on to each other, no matter how long this silent world lasted. As usual, Janai went for her evening walk, her one small escape from the quiet emptiness of the island. She always ended up near the same old church. Faith had always been a big part of her life, and since the world had gone silent, her belief in God had only grown stronger. Every evening she came here to pray, hoping for a sign, a miracle, or even just a feeling that they weren't completely alone. One evening she noticed a stone statue near the church gates. Without thinking, she began talking to it, as though it were alive. The statue, cold and still, couldn't reply, yet Janai spoke to it like a friend. She told it everything, her fears, her loneliness, her memories. She pretended it could understand her and would someday respond. When she returned home, Riley tried his best to pull her out of this growing loneliness. He took her to new places across the island, hoping exploration would lift her mood, but nothing seemed to help. Janai's spirit had dimmed. Adventure no longer interested her. All she wanted was to leave, to escape the endless silence. During one of their trips, they stumbled upon the wreckage of an old airplane. Twisted metal, shattered wings, and scattered debris lay across the blackened ground. To Riley, it was strangely beautiful, a haunting piece of forgotten art. He began photographing it, capturing the play of light on the broken steel. But Janai saw only pain. "This isn't beautiful," she said softly. "It's death. So many people must have died here." Her words sank deep into Riley. Her sadness was beginning to consume everything. No matter how hard he tried to stay positive, Janai's hopelessness kept pulling them both down. Finally, in a burst of anger and frustration, she grabbed the car keys and drove off, leaving Riley behind. He didn't chase her. When night fell, he lay down beside the plane wreck and slept beneath its ruined shell. The next morning, instead of returning home, he wandered deeper into the island. He took pictures of everything unusual and alive: trees, rocks, ruins, anything that could still tell a story. He trusted his father's old camera, the one that didn't depend on electricity. When the power eventually failed, he thought, this camera would still work, still hold their memories. He realized this device might one day be the only thing left to prove they ever existed. But he didn't know how to make Janai understand. She had stopped listening long ago. When his camera's film finally ran out, Riley walked into an abandoned electronics store to search for more. Surrounded by dead machines and flickering monitors, he began to think seriously about what true survival meant in a world without humans. He knew they couldn't just live day to day. They needed a plan, a real strategy for the future. Even if they had food and power now, those things wouldn't last forever. He remembered some survival lessons he once read: gather knowledge, books on farming, medicine, and basic survival. When the internet was gone, books would be the last teachers left. Start farming, grow their own food and depend on the land, create power, use solar panels, wind turbines, or water systems to keep electricity running, control food use, measure what they had, eat smaller portions, and limit themselves to 2 meals a day. Stay active, exercise daily to keep their bodies and minds strong, just like astronauts who survive alone in space for months. Continue humanity. If they could, they needed to make sure life didn't end with them. But even with all these thoughts and plans, something was still breaking between them. The emotional distance between Riley and Janai had become larger than the emptiness of the island itself. They lived together in silence, two survivors surrounded by a world that had forgotten what it meant to be human. Riley had started worrying about what would happen when the electricity finally stopped working. To prepare, he collected a few hardware devices and parts from an abandoned store. His plan was to build a small hydro system that could generate power from flowing water. While carrying all the equipment and taking the elevator down, the doors suddenly jammed for a few seconds. The air felt tight and Riley began to panic. A thought struck him. If the power went out now, he'd be trapped in here forever. When the doors finally opened, he stepped out, shaken but determined. Back home, he began assembling all the parts to build his power system. He understood that nothing on the island would last forever. If they didn't start planning now, survival would become impossible later. Meanwhile, Janai was living in her own world. She spent her days wandering into places that gave her comfort. Sometimes she visited a theater and watched old films playing on loop. Other times she went to a horse farm and rode alone, pretending life was normal again. But no matter where she went, she always came back to Riley because he was the only person left in her world. Riley spent most of his time photographing the island's landscapes from a hilltop. When Janai finally found him there, she was surprised, not because he was gone, but because he hadn't come looking for her. Yet seeing him so calm and focused softened her anger. She stopped fighting with him. They sat together on the hill, silent but close, and Riley promised her that he would find a way out, some path to escape this endless isolation. His love for Janai hadn't faded, even after everything. The two of them then returned to the city, checking different stores for supplies. In one old photography shop, Riley found rolls of unused film and took as many as he could. Janai also picked up things she thought might help them later. Since there was no one left to stop them, they took whatever they needed. Riley soon came up with a new idea, to go camping, just as they had planned before the world fell silent. They packed their supplies, got into the car, and drove far outside the city, heading into the forest. After traveling for a while, they discovered a hidden underground chamber. Its door was wide open, and the place looked messy, as if someone had been living there recently and left in a hurry. They decided to stay there for the night, but as they stepped outside, they saw something unexpected, an old man standing nearby. His name was Neil. When Neil saw them, his eyes widened in shock. His body shook, and he almost collapsed from what looked like a heart attack. It had been decades since he'd seen another human being. Riley quickly ran to help him. Neil was frail and weak, so Riley and Janai took him back to the chamber and shared their food and water with him. For the first time in years, Janai smiled. She was relieved to see another person, but she was also scared, unsure of what his story might be. Later, Neil began telling them everything he knew. Years ago, something strange had happened, a mysterious phenomenon that made people disappear. He said his family had been alive when it all began, and they survived together for a while. But when he returned home after a long time, he found something horrifying. His wife and son had turned against him. Resources had run out, and madness had taken over. One by one, everyone died. Neil looked at them with sad eyes and said, "Whatever happened, it was God's will, and only God can fix it. Until then, you must stay strong and fight through this." Never give up. His words gave Riley and Janai a small spark of hope. They stayed with him that night, talking and sharing stories. But the next morning, Riley broke the news to Janai. Neil had died in his sleep. It wasn't surprising. His body had been too weak. Riley and Janai buried him near the same place where he had buried his own family. It was quiet and peaceful there, but something didn't make sense. Neil had said his wife and son were young. How had they died before him? That mystery was now buried with Neil. After his death, Janai's behavior changed drastically. She became restless and angry. For the first time in years, she had met another human being, and he was gone before she could even understand him. The hope she had found for a brief moment had died once again. Riley brought Janai back to the city, hoping they could start fresh and live peacefully again. But Janai was now filled with frustration and confusion. Meeting Neil had changed something inside her. If they had found one man alive, maybe there were more survivors somewhere. She started going from house to house, checking every room to see if anyone was there. Whenever she found a house empty, she drew a cross on the door to mark it. Riley tried to stop her. "There's no one left, Janai," he said softly. "We shouldn't waste time searching. It's better to focus on how we'll live from now on." But Janai wouldn't listen. She couldn't stop herself. She wanted to believe someone else was still alive. While she spent her days searching the city, Riley worked on his survival plans. After many days of effort, he finally built a small wind turbine that could make a little electricity for their home. When Janai came back, they argued again, both tired and emotional. Eventually, they decided to leave the city for a while and go to the coast. Maybe being near the ocean would calm them. When they reached the sea, Riley took pictures while Janai stared at the endless waves. "Everything else has ended," Riley said quietly. "But look, the water still moves, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, but it never stops." For a moment, they both felt peaceful. Watching the waves crash against the rocks, they kissed, holding on to each other in the middle of a world that had forgotten them. Later that evening, while Janai was working on her laptop, a notification sound suddenly popped up. Her heart started racing. Maybe someone had finally contacted them. Maybe another survivor was out there. But when she opened it, she saw it was just Riley. He had sent her a beautiful photo of her that he had taken earlier. That small act, instead of making her happy, broke her even more. She had no hope left. After a few hours, Riley fell asleep. When he woke up, he noticed an envelope on the table. Inside, it was a photo of Janai, but it was strange. It was taken at the rocky cliffs where Riley often went to take pictures, but he knew he had never photographed her there. He called out her name again and again, but there was no reply. Janai was gone. Terrified, Riley ran outside, jumped into the car, and drove straight to the cliffs. Back at home, the hydro system he had built was working perfectly. Water was running smoothly even without power, but none of that mattered anymore. When he reached the cliffs, he looked around and froze. Janai's body was floating in the water. He shouted her name and ran into the sea, trying to pull her out, but it was too late. The woman he loved, his only reason to live, was gone forever. In despair, Riley almost let himself drown too, but at the last moment, his body forced him to breathe, and he dragged himself back to shore. Now there was no one left. Riley realized he was the last human on Earth. He lifted Janai's body from the water, placed her gently in the car, and sat in silence. Tears streamed down his face as he drove through the empty streets. He didn't care where he was going, he just wanted everything to end. At one point, he even let go of the steering wheel, hoping the car would crash and take his life too. But then his father's words echoed in his head. No matter what happens, survive. With shaking hands, Riley grabbed the wheel again. He didn't know why he was still alive, but he kept driving into the endless horizon. And that's where our story ends.